Welcome to the Ripened Heart Podcast, where we explore the depths of the human psyche through the lens of homeopathy, human design, and astrology for soul-deep healing. Each episode will feature vulnerable and thought-provoking conversations highlighting healing modalities that help us shift our perspective on what it means to be a healthy and fulfilled human being in today's world. I'm your host, Cailee Anello. Let's dive into the podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Ripened Heart Podcast. I'm so excited to finally be doing this project. I've been thinking about it, I think literally for 3 years now. So it's like, you know what? It's finally time to just get into it and try this out. I just was really motivated to start this podcast to bring to light all of the lessons that I've learned and all of the teachers that I've learned from over the last 7 to 8 years when I've been on my own personal healing journey and experimenting in the worlds of holistic health, astrology, human design, and now really homeopathy. If you guys don't know me, my name is Cailee Anello, and I have been reading human design charts for I think 2.5 years at this point, thereabouts. And prior to that, I was really on my own healing journey, still very much am. And I was just experimenting with all the different sides of holistic health and spirituality. It started for me at 19 and I'm 28 now. So I can't believe it's almost been a decade. So I'm like, okay, it's finally time to share what I've learned along my journey. And to really bring in lessons and ideas and perspectives that I think would just be so helpful for humanity at this time. And so that's really what motivated me to do this. And so my intention with this podcast is to really just bring you higher perspectives and different vantage points and things that I've learned along the way that have really helped me in my healing journey and in my really journey back to myself. And obviously, I really strongly believe in tools like human design and astrology to really get your state kind of mirrored back to you. Why did you come here in the first place? You know, what are some of the obstacles that need to be worked on? And then being a second-year homeopathy student and having, been on numerous remedies throughout my years, I'm just seeing how they all really come together, and I want to bring these perspectives to all of you. And so some of these episodes will be solo, me just teaching about different aspects of human design or homeopathy or astrology or whatever happens to be on my mind. And then other episodes will have guests. You know, I really want to interview some fellow astrologers and homeopaths and human design readers and just people who are helping to really shift consciousness at this time and really serve to empower humanity at a time that can be so disempowering. And so I'm so excited today because I couldn't think of a better person to bring on for my first episode than my fiancé, Emily Florence. We've really been on this journey together the entire time. I mean, when we met at 19, we met during spring break in college, and we were both psychology students. And so we shared that love of exploration of the human psyche. And that's always been a big passion for us. And we really have been on this journey together. And so she is actually an astrologer, and she reads natal charts at her website, Cypress Healing Arts, which I think is still under construction, but you can find her on Instagram. And I just really wanted to bring her on today because, first of all, I think she just has so much wisdom to share, and I'm so excited to share her rather with you all. And we've just really had so many beautiful conversations about the lessons that we've gleaned from the last year, where really humanity and life as we knew it completely turned on its head. And, we've learned so much from that process of, really looking and examining where humanity is headed and where is the higher perspective here? Why is this happening now? There's nothing random in nature. These events are all happening because they're reflecting the current state of the cosmos. And so I wanted to bring on Emily to talk a little bit about astrology and what's happening in the sky and why, there's so much division right now and how we can work through it and how we can gain a better perspective about what's happening. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily, and I want her to just share a little bit about herself and why she got interested in astrology. And yeah, over to you, Em. Thanks for being on the podcast.
And thanks for having me. So yeah, as you said, I've been on this healing journey for about 7 years now. And I think when I really started to, where things just started to really click for me and come together, in this totally new way, was this past year, 2020. And, now I'm finding myself reading natal charts, and it's I had an interest in astrology for that time, and just was super fascinated with all of these archetypes, via the zodiac and the planets, are just, I see these as teachers. We all have each of these energies in our charts. They're just all so different. Yeah. And it provides this very unique expression within us all, and just shows us our deeper purpose here. For those that have really found in the last year that they're just looking for, what is your purpose? What is your deeper meaning beyond just this mundane reality that many people continue to live in? So the astrology, in a way, I think, especially last year, kind of found me as I didn't know that I would, I didn't set the intention for many years to be an astrologer. It's just it's kind of one of those things that, again, it found me. It just and then I got a reading last year, and then I just started to decide I just decided I'm just going to go for it. Yeah. And I finally did it. It was just such a strange year. And a lot of major things happening where it's you found that astrologers were actually basically predicting what had happened, or just what sort of energies would be playing out. So there's definitely that element.
Astrologers have been talking about 2020 for a decade at least. We listen to a lot of astrologers that are 10, 20, 30 years our senior, and so they've seen this coming for a long time. And again, another intention with this podcast is I don't know where I would be, especially in my mental health, if I didn't have those people who were brave enough to speak on these topics and give, a different perspective than this doom and gloom that's pumped at us 24/7. Even in the natural health world, it's doom and gloom. It's your freedoms are being taken away from you and you have no power and the world's coming to an end. It's this very cataclysmic energy. And of course there's some truth to that. The mundane world, the everyday world of 9 to 5 and what we were kind of so used to, our comfort zone has been completely ripped away. And that was really, really hard, even for, me, who I had always worked from home, and I was very much not in that paradigm, but, you know, every comfort zone imaginable, it's hard to even plan so far into the future at this point. And, you know, our future plans, you know, we had originally thought, oh, we're going to open a holistic healing clinic, and we were kind of basing it off of our mentors who we had learned from in Chicago, like, oh, they were our role models, and we thought we were just going to kind of take the reins of how they did things. And it's like, wait, some of that stuff doesn't work for our generation. And that was a really hard truth to swallow. You know, we're both very much so immersed in the world of mineral balancing or hair tissue mineral analysis. And we noticed through our own experience and through the experience of our friends and other people in the millennial generation and Gen Z and below now, is that the same things that worked for the older generation do not work to better somebody's health. You know, our tests wouldn't move, we wouldn't get better. And that's what really drove both of us to look deeper at the spiritual purpose of what we're here to do in our generation and what it's going to take to heal now, where, you know, we're coming from a state that's more depleted. You know, the food that we grew up eating isn't the food that, you know, people who are the baby boomers grew up eating, where they take some zinc and some magnesium and they're all better. It's not like that for us. And so I'm grateful though, because it drove us to expand our, you know, our toolbox really. And that's what got me interested in homeopathy. And, you know, I probably spent the majority of 2020 listening to and learning about astrology, and me, you know, immersing myself in my mentorship and seeing patients firsthand and hearing their stories and learning about what it means to be human at this time, what makes a healthy person and what makes an unhealthy person, and how can we move forward. You know, now that everything's been kind of stripped away, how can we move forward? And it's just, it's a really interesting time. And I think it's a time of immense possibility. And that's really, you know, what I want to focus on. And so I don't know your thoughts on all that, Em.
Well, I mean, you pretty much summed it up so well, but it's like, you know, just to go back a little bit to what you're talking about with our generation and the younger generations. I think the older generation has seen that and has acknowledged it. Certainly. Just that, like, it's, you know, some of these things aren't working the same way. And we have to, so what does that mean? That means that we have to really shift how we look at medicine, how we look at health, how we look at, you know, I think a lot of what we both end up studying is like what, you know, it's in the perspective. And we've talked about this a lot, certainly recently, and even just in the last few weeks for myself. It's all about perspective, and just how you see the world really is very important to your health and your well-being, because like yeah. Even if you're in this amazing, you know, modality of like natural healing, there's just so many ways you can go with it, you know, nutrition or homeopathy yeah. or mineral balancing, acupuncture, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like you can get so flung into those and lose, you know, you can become dogmatic.
Yeah, certainly. And a lot of that comes from fear, because something that, you know, I've really thought a lot about recently is even the most amazing tools, if used improperly and if coming at it from a, I guess, lower expression, can be very unhelpful. And when you're in the midst of so much uncertainty, which, you know, some of the planetary transits really echo this and reflect that back to us, it's like even the best tool can be used to promote your myopic view of the world. So, I'm not going to sugarcoat it here. It's like a big reason why I was so invested in astrology in 2020 is because I wanted a sense of control. I was so afraid of like what the future would hold. I got into that very myopic point of view that, we should be scared and everything's uncertain and the world's going to shit and what are we going to do about it? So it's like you can turn to astrology and be like, oh, I feel like I have some semblance of control. I can maybe predict what's going to happen and maybe I'll be more prepared for it. And there's a ton of validity to it. But if you're coming at it from the vantage point of you're just feeding fear, then it can actually be a really unhealthy tool, that I've found personally. And I've heard a lot of people share that same sentiment where, they'll look at the chart and they'll give themselves another reason to be afraid, another reason to hold themselves back, another reason why they can't do something. And so that's something that I really learned the hard way this year is like, we would listen and, there would be this big looming planetary conjunction or square or, conflicting energy in the sky, and you hype yourself up about it. And then the day comes and the way the energy expresses is never the way you expect it. It always does express itself. That's something that I've really seen. That's why astrologers are able to accurately predict things that have happened, and why a lot of astrologers were right in predicting what happened in 2020. But, sometimes, especially since Uranus, which is such an unexpected, unpredictable planet, is such a big player right now and in the past year, it's like, expect the unexpected. Like, even if you know the transits by heart, you have no idea how the energy is going to express. And so it's about like, how can you surrender to that uncertainty, and how can you use astrology, human design, anything, health philosophies, how can you use it to free and empower yourself, not trap yourself in another state of fear and, just a myopic perspective of, the world is scary and life is dangerous and I'm just not going to take any risks and I'm not going to go outside my house. It's not a good way to live. And so I would love for you to speak to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think the thing that just came to me, the biggest picture here is like, how can we take our power back? Yes. Like, use these as tools, but remember that we have the responsibility, if we're talking about healing, for instance, we have the responsibility to heal ourselves, and we have these tools that we don't necessarily want to completely, project power onto, where it's like you have this expectation, and even the same in astrology, where you have this expectation of what is going to happen, and then it just like it really just you create your own trauma when you're disappointed.
Yes.
And
that is so true.
I think well, just to be a little bit more specific, the biggest thing happening in 2020, we had 3 major planets come into conjunction that really set off this whole show. So we had Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter. We're all in Capricorn. They all kind of met up with each other at, a few times, maybe separately. I'll just explain a little bit about what each of these represent.
Yeah, please.
So they're all in Capricorn. So Capricorn is this, it's the structure. It's the old system. It's the authority. It represents the government. And, so if we have Pluto, known to be the destroyer, but also transformation, I think is a great way of summarizing it.
Definitely.
And, teaming up with Saturn, which rules Capricorn. And Saturn, so again, it's that structure, it's that, it's about discipline, and it's the authority, and, it can also be destructive. And then we have Jupiter, which, in some ways is kind of the saving grace. It's the way I see Jupiter, just reflecting back on it, first of all, it's the expansion. Yeah. It's usually optimistic, just shifting our consciousness into seeing the bigger perspective. So the downside with Jupiter can be things being blown out of proportion. So we'll talk about the negative aspect of, obviously, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto with all those energies together. You can maybe see how that can be a bit of a shit show, because that, that can create, total chaos. Yeah. Especially if you take the side of Jupiter that would be blown out of proportion. So we're basically, what we witnessed here was just this, and it's funny, just to just go a little bit off topic. I noticed something that even if you're not completely fluent in astrology, people still use these same words.
Oh my God, I know.
So what we had was a breaking down of old systems. We had we had a crisis in the healthcare industry, obviously. We had a crisis in government. Yep. We had a crisis in education. Yep. And just all of these things that we relied upon were basically just stripped away. Yeah. Now, the positive aspect of let's say the Jupiter there would be that it also gives the chance of expanding beyond this, seeing the bigger picture here, and being able to see okay, what's the good that comes out of this though?
Yeah, what do we do with this? What's the lesson in this energy? Because these energies aren't here to punish us. No. There are energies that are more challenging and energies that are more that flow better and make you feel good. But it's they wouldn't be here if they weren't trying to show us something. And what they were showing us is, you were so rightly saying, I just loved how you described that. It's basically all of these things that we relied upon had holes and cracks in them. How were they destroyed so easily? That's because they didn't have a good foundation.
Exactly. Yes. So Saturn and Capricorn also, are really foundational in that perspective as well. So
absolutely. And it's just, it's okay, we have this amazing opportunity to now create the world that we actually want to live in. Now more than ever, we have all of this ability to take everything that we've seen, all the cracks and holes that have become so obvious to us, and do something with them and create a strong foundation. And that's really what the lesson here is. And, we still have a planet in Capricorn. And so there's something that's still going to continue to break down. The breakdown is not over. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we still have Pluto in Capricorn. And we have that for, a couple more years. And what's super important to note here, especially for Americans, is that America is going through what's called its Pluto Return. Because
this is big.
Yeah, so just like we have birth charts, so do countries, or any entity for that matter. Yeah. Even your business can have a birth chart.
This podcast is a birth chart.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, okay, when it comes to a Pluto return, because it takes, it's a cycle of like roughly 250 years.
Yeah.
So that's why there's talk about like, it's kind of like the fall of an empire.
Yep.
So it's like the fall of Rome happened during Rome's Pluto return. And that's, I want people to be aware of that, not to fear it.
Yeah.
But just just don't be super surprised if things change very drastically from here, particularly in this country. There's a great divide.
Yeah.
A very obvious divide. And honestly, in a few different ways.
Yeah.
But it's just bringing out that polarity. And, Pluto likes to see, it's also like the underworld and the psychologist. Like, it wants to find the truth of what's happening. It's not settling for anything superficial.
Yeah.
So if we're going to go and pretend that, like, everything has been great, and things like that, like, and just, like, live in this bubble of, like, we can continue as things have been, what change would that bring? How would we evolve as humans, as individuals, as a species, if we didn't have, like, these challenges to really, like, face head on, and use them as opportunities to grow? And I think, when it comes to astrology, you can look at the macro, which is kind of what we're talking about, but then, it's very, very important to look at the micro and see it also as what you do, what you say, what you think, how you live your life. All of that matters, and all of that shapes the world around us. And I think we so often get caught up in this externalization that we forget that we're contributing to it in some way, shape, or form. And the problem with that is that we're giving away our power. We're waiting for other things, other people, whoever was voted in to save us from ourselves.
Yes.
Because we don't want to do the work. Even those of us who think that we want to do the work often don't want to do the work. And
so true. Yeah, and I see, I see these politicians, these political figureheads that have come in as just archetypes of the energies playing out. Think about Trump and Biden. I don't care who the fuck you voted for. I don't care. What my point is that Trump was like the bull in the china shop. He was that destructive force to what we knew Capricorn, to what we knew government, to what we knew of our country to be. And he totally came in and he just trashed the place, and he made us see where we are actually at as a people. And then you have Joe Biden, who's coming in, who's another archetype, a manifestation of these archetypes of the dying career politician. These people who have been in government for, what has he been in government, 47 years, something like that. He literally, his body is breaking down before our eyes. And it's just a manifestation of this archetypal energy of the dying Capricorn. Now we're shifting into Aquarius, which is like, where do we go from here? What we've been doing, relying on these authority figures, is not going to work moving forward, clearly. And that's why we're seeing, this shit show before us playing out, and this division between us growing bigger and bigger and bigger until the Pluto return is exact in the United States in 2022. So, it's no coincidence. And when you know that these are just energies playing out, it's a mirror, it's a reflection of the cosmic energy. You see it in a different way and you don't let it trigger you in the same way,
Yes, and something about Pluto is, it's often talked about, and we all know it. There's a big division. And obviously that can be, that has its destructive force, but it also has its constructive force as well. Why? Because how many of us have found that we lost a lot of relationships over the past year? Ones that weren't meant to be, just either naturally were taken from us, or just like, you just realize that, you realize who shared your values and who didn't.
Yeah.
I think that was really critical for all of us to be able to see. And, there's, that can be hard to see this division between people when it's like we kind of have this, we're kind of sold this this idea of unity, when it's like, I think maybe it's just trying to say that we should find the people that do share our values, and not to say that we all need to be the same and be robots and can't have constructive conversations, but to find the people that like we depend on and we we can trust, we rely on to be there for us when we need them. You know what I mean? Because it's like, just thinking even just biologically, if there are traumas that are happening in the external world that are very real, and there's just like, it's kind of like, you said, expect the unexpected, because that's exactly the Aquarian way. It's not to be in fear of it, but to just see that, like, okay, it's good to have like that community, because that's Aquarian. That's the Aquarian nature, is to have, that's about your group. That's about your friendships, your long-term vision, freedom even.
Because this year is all about Aquarius. There's so much Aquarian energy, just to preface, if you don't know what we're talking about. Oh, I mean, just pull up a chart right now of the current transits. You can go to astro.com. It's like, holy Aquarius.
Yeah, and especially in the month of February, which is, the month of Aquarius. But, it started with the Saturn Jupiter conjunction on December 21st of 2020 in Aquarius, that really set the stage for this full shift into Aquarius. So it's about air, and it's largely about like what we can't even see. So that's why I talk about just like things, we want to build connections based on values, like what, if we have similar, if we can actually rely on people and find our people during this time, like it's so important, because it's like Aquarius wants us to move beyond this government dependency and actually start to rely on each other. Ourselves is very important, to rely on ourselves. So that's step one. We need that first. But we also, like, we're social creatures. We need each other.
Yes.
I think maybe, astrology and human design can really speak to how, like, we are very different, and still how we approach that. But
I mean, human design is called the science of differentiation, because the whole purpose of human design is, they say, to dehomogenize us. We've all become, we all think that we have to think the same way, say the same thing, have the same belief systems. You're either a good person or a bad person right now. And it's interesting because, obviously our country's divided. That's very plain to see. But then it's like, wow, even the like little niche communities are really divided. And it's just interesting to see people kind of branch off. And I'm just curious to see how this energy plays itself out. But, it's very clear that community is so, so important, especially if you're between the ages of, 28 to 31, I might get that wrong. If your Saturn is in Aquarius, you're coming into your Saturn return, which Em and I both are. And so we're learning that now more than ever, is like feeling that pain of feeling alone. Saturn is restriction, Aquarius is the group. So feeling restricted, like not really having a total sense of community, especially when it's really hard to meet people in person. So it's like Aquarius rules the internet. So we go online to find our community. And that's been something else that Em and I have both done, is like, joining astrology groups and finding our people online. And that's something that's really powerful. If you feel alone in your beliefs or how you feel, and you're afraid to express your opinions, I get it. I get it. Trust me. And I just want to say that you're truly not alone. And I think I have an interesting vantage point just working with clients, and also seeing patients in homeopathy clinic. As a student, I shadow every single week. And for those of you unfamiliar with homeopathy, the first appointment is 2 hours of you telling your story. And we just sit there and listen. And by we, I mean the homeopath I'm learning from, and me as the student, I'm typing notes. And the whole purpose of homeopathy is to connect you to a remedy that will help you move through these physical and mental blocks, whether it's a physical condition or an emotional condition or old trauma, or, as a human design reader, it can help you move through sticky points in the chart or in your body graph that you just can't seem to get past. There's remedies that help you to move past it by raising your inner vitality and giving you the strength and courage to really be yourself, and to dehomogenize yourself and to be different. And so when I'm hearing people tell their stories, their childhood and who they've become and the lessons that they've learned, I just see pattern after pattern after pattern. Sometimes it even, again, it reflects the astrological energy on a micro level again, which is like the personal level. And I see that there's so many people who feel like they're alone in their experience. There's so many people who feel like an outcast. There's so many people who don't feel connected to their families right now or their communities, and who have a lot of wounding there. And it's just been such a pleasure and a privilege to witness these people's stories and to see them move through their process, with each follow-up appointment, as they work with their remedy, and as the remedy helps to broaden their perspective and to free themselves physically and mentally from some of the chains that may have been binding them without them realizing it. It's just such a beautiful thing to witness people to grow and evolve and change, and to realize that we're all going through our own version of this right now. And so if we can understand that, and if we can really seek out community of, again, people who see the world the way we do, because, sometimes you can be standing next to somebody and they literally see reality in a completely different way than you do. And, that's the case with this Pluto division, this psychic split, really. And we have to make peace with that and see it as a gift of, you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And thank God, because how could you be in relationship with every person on the planet? Nobody has time to do that. You have to know your people and really invest in those relationships. And, this differs a little bit based on your human design. Because, for example, I'm a 2/4 profile, if you're familiar, to hermit, opportunist. And so I'm all about my personal network of people and really fostering those relationships, and then going back into hermit mode and, being in my own creative process. But somebody who has a 5 in their profile, or even a 6, they're more for the collective and for the stranger, and they have a big impact on people that don't know them. And so there's a lot of nuance here. We're really all supposed to be very, very different. And, homeopathy kind of takes that on steroids, because there are literally thousands of homeopathic remedies, and there's only a handful that are going to resonate with your specific situation. And that's my job as a homeopath, is to understand where you're resonating and what's going to resonate with your specific condition, and to match you with a remedy that's going to help you to heal based on that. And so that's what I think is so beautiful, is the more I learn about humans and humanity and psychology and all of these wonderful things, the more I see is like, wow, we really, all of us, have a very different perspective on life, where we can only see it through our specific lens.
Yeah, and what that kind of reminds me of is one of the major themes astrologically of the past year, and it's still happening, by the way, is just that we have a south node in Sagittarius and the north node in Gemini. So Sagittarius south node would really explain these kind of like, this is like your belief systems. So the evangelical nature of like needing people to believe the same thing as you, or try to convert people to your side of an argument, or where it's like you can also see that in the divide. And then Gemini, on the other hand, is like, okay, what about like doing the research and investigating, the facts and the information, and so, and also just kind of like, seeking out people that, are willing to have conversations, which I think was largely, and still is kind of largely missing, is even just, I hear so many people talking about, where's the debate?
Yeah.
With what happened last year? Where is the open debate? Because I think that's what, and there's a lot of censorship and and whatnot, and like just confusion and of information. And who is willing to let go of that like dogma that can be in the south node of Sagittarius, and just be more open-minded to what's happening.
Yes, exactly. And the nodes in astrology are associated with the moon, so they're the lunar nodes. And the south node is always what we're trying to evolve past, and we're always trying to grow into your north node. So like Em was saying earlier, the nodes currently are in Sagittarius and Gemini, and then you're going to have your own personal nodal position in your natal chart to consider. And then even in human design, you're going to have specific gates in your nodal placements that give you even more information on what you're meant to, integrate, but also leave behind the lower expression of in the south node, and where you're supposed to grow and learn and evolve in the north node. And it's so interesting because, I'm currently in my nodal opposition, where my north node is Sagittarius and my south node is Gemini. And, your house placements echo that too. Even though you have a different north and south node, they're still in the third and the ninth house axis, which is ruled by Gemini and Sagittarius. So yeah, it's interesting, that's why I'm saying like, I'm embracing the positive aspect of Sagittarius, which is, I'm all about leaving dogma behind in every aspect. I did that in nutrition, where I don't believe there's one diet that fits all. I did that in homeopathy, where I think there's room for constitutional care, and I think there's room for protocol, and I think there's room for all of it. It just depends on the person and what that specific person needs. And, it's about also the higher expression of Sagittarius is speaking your truth, and what I've been talking about since the beginning of the podcast, which is that broader perspective, that higher vantage point that is useful to detach from your emotions in the current situation, and to see things from an objective observer perspective, and projectors in human design do that so well. You know, they have that bird's eye view perspective that's so important, and that they really can bring to humanity at this time. You know, I think we need the projector perspective more than ever before. And also, you know, it's considering what centers you have defined or open in your human design body graph. You know, both of us have open head and open ajna, which means that I don't see anything as 100% fact or truth. And that's appropriate for us. But then there's going to be people who have a defined head and ajna who are like, no, this is how I see the world. This is what I think and feel, and I'm going to bring that perspective, and I'm going to influence other people with that because that's what I'm supposed to do. And me, I'm always like, how can I see every perspective and integrate it? And, you know, I don't take anything from anybody as 100%. I take what I like and I leave the rest. And that's been another big lesson from the past year, is like, I can agree with you up to an extent, and I'm going to listen to everybody, no matter if they're shamed or bashed in the public. Like, everybody has seeds of truth. And I think that we really need to move past like the outer expression of somebody, and to not be afraid to explore every side of something, and to be open and honest about that process of imperfection and integration, and being curious and literally open-minded, and to not get dogmatic, the lower expression of Sagittarius, to integrate it all, the higher expression of Gemini. And, you know, the lower expression of Gemini is, well, I'm not going to share that because I want to fit in. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want my neighbor to look at me a certain way. And it's like, yeah, but these truths, they're here for a reason, and they need to be expressed at this time. And, you know, you just sometimes you gotta rock the boat.
Yeah, and I also wanted to note that Sagittarius is about using your intuition, and just like that.
Yes.
That like that gut muscle, like that. You know, you can. So when it comes to the nodes, I wanted to say that you do have the strength in the South Node. That's like what you're good at, but you're just it's an uncomfortable shift into the opposite sign. So because it's meant for you to grow. And so what you can do is research information, use your logic, be open to different points of view, but at the end of the day, use your intuition to guide what feels right to you. Mm-hmm. Because we often ignore that. So often ignore that. And, you know, how many people nowadays even use their intuition and, you know, just don't constantly discredit that.
Yeah.
Even ones who are highly intuitive, like I think we can all be guilty of that, and then come back later and be like, damn it, I was right.
Yes, and it doesn't matter, you know, like in human design, we always talk about listen to your gut. It doesn't matter what type you are, like you have your own specific intuitive capacity that's more or less, you know, something that you can tune into regardless if it's in your gut, your spleen, or your emotional center, whatever it is that provides you with that feedback of like, yes, this is right for me. No, this isn't right for me. And, you know, it's the more that we can tune into that and leave that very heady, logical, it needs to be proved and fact-based, the more that we can actually create the world that we want to live in, because that, you know, then we are our own authorities. And that's always the message I'm trying to promote to my clients, you know, through their readings or whatever it may be, is like, you're your own authority. Like, how liberating and how scary. But you learn to trust yourself, and, you know, it's like hindsight is always 20/20, and you can look back on the past and see where your heart was trying to tell you something, your gut was trying to tell you something, and if you would have listened, it would have opened up so many doors for you. And even if you don't listen to it, you know, there's going to be a lesson in that too, and, you know, what's meant for you will still keep coming back to you, and it's a process, a constant evolution, you know. that's what this life is about. And so we're always going to get it wrong. We're always going to have to grow and change. And, there's always going to be something that we're working on because we're humans and we're imperfect. And what's interesting about the time we're living in is, Em and I, we talked about this before the podcast, is that you've never before had to deal with the opinions of thousands and thousands and thousands of strangers. Like the average person who's putting their heart and soul into a project like a podcast or has their own business or whatever it be, we've never had to deal with like these internet mobs that, can come for you and try to cancel you or try to do this or that. And there's a lot of pressure out there, but it's the more that we're honest, the more we set that precedent that it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to not know something. It's okay to be uncertain. It's okay to question. The more we're going to heal that, I think, and the less the division, that divisional energy is going to get to us at this time.
Yeah, we do not all need to think the same thoughts. I think that would be a very boring world if we were all like that. Yes. So I think that's just another aspect of it. But yeah, there's, I think another thing I'd like to bring in is this concept or this transit of Chiron and Aries.
Yes.
Which is so heavily tied to what you look like and your identity.
Yeah. So describe Chiron. What's Chiron?
Yeah. So Chiron is the wounded healer. He never actually healed himself, ironically, but it's kind of where Chiron is in your own personal chart will show you which area of your life is just gonna kind of come up for you just throughout your life as this insecurity and this trauma that like we have to work through. And when we get to the point where it's like we can find that there's once again we talk about lower expressions and higher expressions, and in the case of Chiron and Aries, as I said, it's so heavily tied to your identity and how you present yourself to the world. It's your personality, because I also think in terms of Aries ruling the first house of your identity and your personality. So there have been fights about how you identify.
Yes.
And almost like a bit of an obsession. And, it's just interesting where it's like another astrologer has brought up the fact that, well, now it's like, we have to wear face coverings where you're like literally covering part of yourself.
Yes.
And then that becomes like a psychological trauma in and of itself. And, it's interesting to just kind of take a step back and see how this all kind of plays out. It really plays out in different forms. But like, the person who feels the hurt often wants to then put that back onto the other, to, as opposed to like working through that and empowering themselves in who they are. You know what I mean? Where it's like we want so badly for that acceptance of the identity that like we end up getting lost in it.
Yeah.
So as we're in this transit, this is the collective experience.
And so it makes sense, again, it's like nothing is random. Everything is here to teach us something. And that's why I love astrology, is because you can look at the transits and you can understand why now, why are we experiencing these things now? There's a reason. And it's because we're supposed to integrate these wounds around identity, and also to be aware that in the lower expression we can be manipulated by these wounds, and you use it to hurt people, and that's where that psychological trauma can occur too, with, like you were saying, like there's no coincidence as to why face masks are popping up into our reality right now, is because again it's just a archetypal expression of this Chiron and Aries identity wound in a very, random way. And that's why I'm saying you can never predict how the energy is going to express. Nobody predicted this thing, but we knew that there was going to be a lot of talk about identity, a lot of wounding around identity, and a lot of attempts to heal identity wounds and to move past that, to know that, yes, you are a unique individual, but also to not let that hold you back from anything, your identity wounds. And it's interesting, this is a whole episode that I want to do, is talking about, you and I, our experiences in our relationships as having sometimes opposing centers defined in human design. And so I have an open identity center. So my perspective on this is going to be very different than you, who has a defined identity center and has a more consistent, I guess, way of viewing and presenting yourself to the world, whereas mine's a little bit more fluid and dynamic. And so it's been interesting in this time to experience that as somebody who has an open identity. And every time I've tried to label myself as something, it just kind of, it didn't work. And so that'll be a whole nother podcast, I think, of relationship dynamics, between our charts and our body graphs, and then, that conversation around identity and how it's experienced differently based on your design. This has been such an amazing conversation. I've so loved this. I'm so excited to put this out into the world. I'm so happy that you were here today to give us all this insight. It's been absolutely amazing. Do you have any closing thoughts? And also, I just want you to say where people can find you.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on. It's been fun. And I guess my last thoughts here are just, or I guess a little bit of advice. I know we all get this, but in this Aquarian age, we're so tuned into the technology that we often forget to just step away and start to understand what we actually believe, what we think, and who we are. So it's if you have to force yourself to get away from your phone and get into nature, that's such a beautiful way of reconnecting to yourself, because it all comes back to that. And then you start to get that bigger perspective ultimately when you do that more often, and you'll find more of your flow through this process. And I think it's easier to get a healthier perspective on this whole situation when it can be so easy to get trapped in this myopic viewpoint. So I just wanted to end on that. And so you can find me at Cypress Healing Arts, and that's Cypress as in the tree. So that's CYPRESS. CypressHealingArts.com. And then my Instagram is Cypress Healing Arts.
Wonderful. Well, oh my gosh, thank you so much to anybody who's made it this far. Thank you so much for giving me the gift of your time today. I don't take that for granted at all. I know there's a lot of different podcasts and things you could be tuning into and doing. So thank you so much. You can find me at theripenedheart.com, and I'm The Ripened Heart on Instagram and Telegram. And just thank you so much. And we will see you guys next time.